One night, which changed the entire kingdom, where politics, mystery, and strategy met in the power of one girl's sex and intellect. Today, I will tell you the story of that mystery, which has retained its remaining power even after being hidden in the pages of history. If you want to know how the events of one night can stabilize or destroy an entire kingdom, then watch this story until the end. If you like the video, like, subscribe, and click on the bell icon, because we reveal the most mysterious truths of history only for our brave viewers. At the stroke of midnight in April 1538, the stone corridors of Montelucia Palace whispered with secrets. Not screams, not laughter, but attention so sharp it could slice through armor. Guards averted their gaze. Diplomats exchanged uneasy glances. What unfolded in the private chambers of the young Duchess Isabella de Monteforte was a ritual not of passion, but of power. In the pale moonlight, under the shadow of an encroaching political storm, the 21-year-old Duchess was about to enact a tradition that had shaped Italian dynasties for centuries. Her body, her choices, her every sigh were to become instruments of statecraft. Picture a royal bedroom where intimacy is currency, where a noblewoman's every gesture can shift alliances, topple rivals, and safeguard her family. Tonight, Isabella would transform from bride to strategist, from pawn to player, in a game far more lethal than any battlefield. This was no ordinary wedding night. It was a test, recorded in the shadows by silent witnesses hidden in the palace corridors, every detail meticulously documented to ensure the continuation of the Monteforte line. The stakes were immense. Italy in 1538 was fractured. Florence, Venice, Milan, and Naples all playing intricate chess games of marriage, bloodlines, and betrayal. A single misstep could spell political ruin or death. Isabella's husband, Count Lorenzo di Salerno, was no ordinary nobleman. At 26, he was both a brilliant tactician and a seasoned warrior, known for designing fortifications and leading sieges with ruthless precision. Yet even he would soon discover that surviving a night with Isabella required more than skill. It required respect, strategy, and understanding of the silent rules of the court. Their first private encounter, weeks before the wedding, had been brief but electric. Isabella tested him with wit and poise, and Lorenzo responded with restraint and subtle charm. For the court, this was a performance. For them, it was the awakening of a real connection, a dangerous complication in a world ruled by contracts and dowries. The marriage was finalized on April 3rd, 1538. Isabella brought with her not only a vast dowry, but also the lessons of survival. Her mother, a twice-widowed duchess, had navigated intrigues that left rivals dead and allies rich. Isabella understood that strength in the bedroom could translate directly into political leverage. On the night of April 14th, the palace became a theater. Crimson velvet curtains framed the bed. Candles flickered against frescoed walls depicting battles, treaties, and dynastic unions. Hidden observers, placed by Isabella herself, took notes in silence, ensuring that nothing could later be disputed. Every gesture, every carefully measured movement was part of a ritual dating back centuries. Noble marriages were not private. They were contracts enforced through intimacy. Proof of consummation could prevent annulments, secure heirs, and ward off political attacks. Isabella entered the chamber with calm authority. She had survived 2 previous engagements, both dissolved due to intrigue and betrayal. She was no innocent. She was a survivor, a strategist, and now a player in the deadliest game of all, dynastic survival. Lorenzo, confident yet respectful, knew the rules. His reputation as a leader depended not just on his battlefield exploits, but on his ability to perform under scrutiny. This night was both an examination and a declaration. The Monteforte line would endure. The first act was ritual, the second laced with genuine connection. Passion and duty intertwined, creating a force that neither could ignore. The observers recorded every detail, the alignment of gestures, the timing, the endurance. This was documentation with a purpose, legal, political, and strategic. By dawn, a new reality had been forged. Isabella had transformed from bride to a pillar of the dynasty. Lorenzo had proven his strength and composure. Together, they had turned a night of obligation into a demonstration of unbreakable alliance. The ripple effects were immediate. Rivals who had anticipated scandal found themselves powerless. Alliances shifted. Treaties were reconsidered. The Monteforte and Salerno houses emerged stronger, their union sanctified not just by law or church, but by the silent proof of strategy executed flawlessly. In the weeks following the wedding night, Montelucia Palace became a labyrinth of whispers and veiled glances. Isabella moved with the grace of someone who knew every corridor, every servant's loyalty, every courtier's ambition. She had survived betrayal before, and now she was learning the subtler art, influence, without detection. Letters flowed in secret between her allies in Venice, Florence, and even Rome. Each carefully worded note reinforced her position, ensuring that rival families would think twice before plotting against the Monteforte line. She understood the power of perception. A duchess underestimated could be more dangerous than an army. One evening, Isabella received an unexpected visitor. Lady Beatrice d'Alviano, a distant cousin known for her cunning and ruthlessness. Beatrice had come with veiled warnings, subtle threats, and inquiries into the wedding night's legitimacy, a test of Isabella's political acumen. Isabella met her with calm poise. Every word, every gesture was measured. She spoke of devotion to Lorenzo, the sanctity of their union, and the unshakable continuity of the Monteforte line. Beatrice, sensing the strength behind the veneer, left with neither victory nor insult, a silent acknowledgement that Isabella was no ordinary bride. As spring deepened, court life became a theater of subtle wars. Courtiers whispered of alliances, chancellors took careful notes of Isabella's interactions, and spies lurked in every shadow. Isabella knew sometimes surviving meant turning these invasions into assets. Every rumor she allowed to circulate was carefully controlled. Every compliment she received could be used as leverage in negotiations.
Amidst this web of strategy, Isabella discovered another dimension of her influence, the art of personal loyalty. She cultivated a circle of confidants who owed allegiance not just to the Monteforte name, but to her personally. This network became a shield against betrayal, a web of intelligence that extended across Italy. Meanwhile, Lorenzo faced his own challenges. Military campaigns required his attention, yet he found himself increasingly reliant on Isabella's counsel. He realized that a general could lead armies, but a duchess could shape empires from behind a veil of elegance and restraint. Their partnership, forged in the crucible of the wedding night, now extended into governance, diplomacy, and strategy. But the palace was not without danger. A rival faction, the Mancini family, plotted to undermine Isabella's position. Whispers suggested they intended to spread scandal, to question the legitimacy of the heir, and to destabilize the Monteforte-Salerno alliance. Isabella anticipated every move, countering before attacks could be launched. Her mastery of intrigue became her sharpest weapon, more precise than any sword. In the quiet of her chambers, Isabella reflected on how far she had come. From a bride navigating expectations, she had become a commander of secrets, a strategist of loyalty, and a woman whose influence extended beyond her husband, beyond the court, and into the politics of an entire region. Even Lorenzo could not fully grasp the depth of her cunning, yet he trusted her, understanding that their survival and the survival of their dynasty depended on their alignment. Together, they had transformed Montelucia Palace from a stage of observation into a fortress of power, where the quiet, deliberate moves of a single duchess could decide the fate of nations. Months passed, and spring gave way to summer. Isabella's position within Montelucia Palace was no longer tentative. She had become indispensable. Yet with every victory came new dangers. The Mancini faction had not vanished. Instead, they plotted more subtly, testing the limits of her alliances and the loyalty of her supporters. Then came the pivotal moment, the birth of their first child. The entire court held its breath. The legitimacy of the heir was more than personal, it was the lifeline of the Monteforte-Salerno alliance. The palace was filled with physicians, midwives, and secret observers, tasked with recording the event, ensuring that no rival could challenge the child's birthright. Isabella, ever composed, endured the trials of childbirth with a mixture of strength and strategic calculation. Every decision, from her position during labor to the timing of announcements, was made to secure political advantage. When she gave birth to a healthy son, the court erupted, not with mere celebration, but with recognition that Isabella had not only survived, but had solidified her dynasty. The birth was also a subtle warning to rivals. Her power was now tangible, codified, and undeniable. Rumors that had been planted by the Mancinis dissolved under the weight of documented proof. The Montelucia alliance was stronger than ever, and Isabella's influence was cemented. But Isabella did not rest. She knew that power was never static. Using her network of allies and spies, she uncovered secret plots, intercepted letters, and even orchestrated strategic encounters to test loyalties. Every action was deliberate, every interaction a potential chess move. Lorenzo, balancing military campaigns with court politics, came to rely on Isabella's intelligence. He realized that while armies could defend lands, it was Isabella's mastery of strategy, perception, and subtle persuasion that truly safeguarded their dynasty. Together, they were an unstoppable force, a combination of strength, cunning, and foresight. Meanwhile, rival courts watched with fascination and envy. The union of Montelucia and Salerno was now seen as a model of political and personal alignment. Other noble families began to emulate Isabella's strategies, forging influence through alliances, leveraging intimacy for loyalty, and documenting actions to prevent challenges. Yet threats persisted. The Mancinis made a bold move, attempting to challenge Isabella's authority through the courts and the church. Isabella countered with elegance. She produced documentation, testimonies, and even subtle displays of loyalty among her servants and allies that left the Mancinis powerless. Every challenge she faced became an opportunity to reinforce her dominance. Isabella's evolution from a bride to a strategist was complete. She had taken the tools of her environment, marriage, influence, observation, and transformed them into instruments of control. Her ability to survive and thrive in a world designed to constrain women made her not only a duchess, but a master of Renaissance political warfare. Through these calculated moves, Isabella ensured that her child, her husband, and her allies would remain secure. The palace had become more than a residence. It was a command center, a theater of power, and a sanctuary of strategy. Every whisper, every glance, every letter carried weight, and Isabella had learned to wield them all with precision. As years passed, Isabella's influence only deepened. Her son grew under the protective shadow of her strategy, every step carefully guided to secure the Monteforte-Salerno legacy. Rival families had learned a difficult lesson. Isabella was not a passive duchess to be undermined. She was a force of nature, a master of foresight and diplomacy. Even Lorenzo, the seasoned warrior, recognized that his greatest victories came not on the battlefield, but within the palace walls. Together, they had redefined what it meant to rule. Strength was measured not just in armies, but in alliances, subtlety, and the strategic application of influence. The Mancini faction eventually dissolved, defeated not by open conflict, but by the invisible hand of Isabella's careful planning. Her network of allies, confidants, and spies ensured that threats were neutralized before they could grow. The palace, once a theater of tension and hidden agendas, had become a fortress of loyalty and power. But Isabella's story was not only one of defense. She also expanded the reach of the Monteforte-Salerno influence across Italy. Through marriages, strategic alliances, and carefully curated friendships, she built a network that extended far beyond Montelucia. Nobles from Venice, Florence, and Naples recognized her acumen, and many sought her counsel,
quietly acknowledging that her power rivaled that of kings. Her mastery of what historians would later call courtly strategy became a model for generations. Isabella showed that survival in a patriarchal, politically fraught world required more than obedience. It demanded intelligence, observation, and the courage to act decisively. She had transformed a single wedding night into a lifetime of influence, demonstrating that the most potent weapons are often unseen. By the end of her reign, Isabella had not only secured the Monteforte-Salerno dynasty, but had also reshaped the expectations of women in positions of power. She proved that intellect, strategy, and courage could bend a system designed to crush ambition. Her legacy was written not only in the records of her family, but in the silent, enduring influence she wielded across courts throughout Italy. And so the story of Isabella de Monteforte reminds us, the corridors of power are not always filled with armies and battles. Sometimes they are silent chambers, whispered secrets, and calculated acts of influence. A single night, a single choice, can ripple across history, changing the fate of nations. History's most dangerous and strategic players are not always found on the battlefield. Sometimes they wield their power quietly, skillfully, and invisibly, transforming survival into dominance and influence into legacy.